Kaiva had been watching New Haven Colony for exactly 6 months, 14 days, and approximately 7 hours when her entire mission fell apart in the most unexpected way possible. From her concealed observation post in the hills overlooking the human settlement, she'd cataloged every pattern of daily life, the morning routines, the infrastructure vulnerabilities, the social dynamics, the resource distribution. Her Sindari training had taught her that proper intelligence gathering required patience, precision, and the understanding that information was the ultimate weapon. Her assignment was clear: assess whether humanity's expansion into this sector posed a threat to Sindari interests, develop contingency plans, report recommendations to the Council. What she'd observed over 6 months had been concerning. Humans were chaotic, unpredictable, dangerously creative. They improvised solutions to problems that should require years of careful planning. They formed emotional bonds that transcended logical benefit. They consumed alarming amounts of caffeine and approached safety protocols with what Kaiva's reports diplomatically termed optimistic flexibility. Her preliminary conclusions suggested managed contact, Sindari euphemism for controlled interaction, designed to limit human expansion while appearing cooperative. Possibly stronger measures if they proved too destabilizing. She was finalizing her analysis when her proximity sensors detected an approaching human. Kaiva's bioluminescent patterns flashed through rapid threat assessments. Her concealment should be perfect. Her equipment emitted no detectable signatures. 6 months of surveillance without discovery proved her operational security. Then Nathan Cross appeared at her observation post with his hands visible and empty, looking more curious than hostile. "You've been watching us for months," he said calmly. "Very thoroughly from what I can tell. Want to explain why, or should I alert colony security and make this significantly more complicated for both of us?" Kaiva's training covered countless scenarios: combat extraction, diplomatic contact, capture, and interrogation. It didn't cover being casually discovered by a single human who seemed more interested than threatened. Her patterns flashed through calculations. Her long ears detected his heartbeat, elevated but controlled, not panicking. His electromagnetic signature showed alert curiosity, not hostile intent. "I am Sindari Observer," she said, choosing partial honesty. "My people monitor species in this sector for mutual security purposes. Your colony's expansion prompted routine surveillance." Routine surveillance involving 6 months of detailed infrastructure mapping, behavioral analysis, and Nathan gestured to her equipment. "What looks like contingency planning for multiple scenarios including hostile contact. That's pretty thorough for routine." He'd seen her data, understood enough to recognize what it represented. This human was more perceptive than her intelligence suggested possible. "How did you find me?" Kaiva asked, genuinely curious despite her tactical situation. "Pattern recognition. Small anomalies, wildlife avoiding this area, minor power fluctuations in our outer sensors, the kind of details sophisticated equipment would miss but a bored human might notice." Nathan smiled slightly. "I'm a security analyst. Patterns are kind of my thing. You track me through wildlife behavior and power fluctuations." Kaiva's patterns shifted to something that might have been respect. "That is, impressively primitive methodology. We prefer elegantly simple. Works better than you'd think." They stared at each other. Sindari observer and human analyst, both calculating next moves, both aware the situation could escalate or de-escalate based on what happened next. "So," Nathan said finally, "you've been spying on us for 6 months, probably preparing recommendations on whether we're a threat worth containing. I could alert security, make this a diplomatic incident, blow up whatever plans your people have. Or," he paused, "we could talk. Maybe find out if there's a better option than mutual suspicion and potential conflict." Kaiva's bioluminescent patterns cycled through complex calculations. This human had found her, understood her purpose, and was offering conversation instead of confrontation. Her training said to eliminate the threat, destroy evidence, extract immediately. Her 6 months of observation suggested that human unpredictability might be worth exploring rather than fearing. "We could talk," she said slowly. "Though I warn you, what I have observed about your species was preparing me to recommend significant containment measures. Then let's see if I can change your mind. I make pretty good coffee, and apparently your reports say we're alarmingly good at that." Despite herself, despite the tactical disaster this represented, Kaiva found herself following this human who just destroyed 6 months of covert surveillance with simple curiosity and pattern recognition, and wondering if maybe her observations had been missing something crucial about humanity all along. Nathan led Kaiva to a small maintenance shelter on the colony's outskirts, close enough to her observation post to avoid long exposure but isolated enough for private conversation. He started a coffee maker with practiced ease, while Kaiva assessed escape routes and calculated probability of this being a trap. "Relax," Nathan said, noticing her tactical posture. "If I wanted you captured, security would already be here. I'm genuinely curious about what 6 months of spying taught you about us. Why not alert your authorities immediately?" "Because you've been here 6 months and haven't done anything overtly hostile. You observed, analyzed. That suggests your people want to understand us before making decisions." Nathan poured 2 cups of coffee. "I respect that more than I'd respect someone who showed up with demands or threats without doing the homework first." Kaiva accepted the coffee cautiously, her sensors analyzing it for contaminants before she risked a sip. "Your species consumes this in quantities that should be physiologically concerning." "Yeah, we get that a lot. So 6 months of observation, what did you learn?" Kaiva found herself explaining Sindari philosophy with more honesty than protocol allowed. "We observe because we plan. Careful, long-term planning based on complete information. Your species is concerning because you don't operate that way. You improvise, you adapt. You make decisions based on incomplete data and emotional factors that defy logical analysis. And that makes us dangerous. It makes you unpredictable. Unpredictable species are either valuable allies or existential threats. We observe to determine which category you fit." Her bioluminescent patterns shifted contemplative amber. "My initial assessment leaned toward threat requiring containment." "Containment meaning what exactly?" "Managed contact. Controlled interaction designed to limit your expansion while appearing cooperative. Possibly more aggressive measures if you proved too destabilizing to coexist with peacefully." Nathan sipped his coffee, processing that. "So you were preparing to recommend that your people either manipulate us or eliminate us as a threat. That's honest, at least." "Honesty seems appropriate given you've already compromised my operational security." Kaiva studied him with eyes adapted to see in spectrums humans couldn't perceive. "What I don't understand is why you haven't already alerted your authorities. You've discovered hostile surveillance, learned of potential containment plans, and you're drinking coffee with me and asking questions. Because I want to understand your perspective before I decide if you're actually hostile or just cautious." Nathan met her gaze steadily. "You've been watching us for 6 months. What changed your assessment from probably a threat to meeting with me instead of extracting immediately?" Kaiva's patterns flickered through complex emotions. Specifically, you found me through primitive pattern recognition that my sophisticated equipment didn't detect. You approached with curiosity instead of hostility. You offered conversation instead of confrontation." She paused. "This is exactly the unpredictable behavior that makes your species concerning, but also intriguing." "So we're concerning and intriguing. That's better than just concerning, I guess. Your emotional volatility should be weakness. Your improvisation should lead to chaos. Your refusal to follow careful long-term planning should result in constant disasters." Kaiva's voice carried genuine confusion. "But instead, you survive. You adapt. You solve problems that should require years of preparation through what you call elegant simplicity. I have spent 6 months trying to understand how this is possible. And what have you concluded? That my models for predicting your behavior are fundamentally flawed. That your unpredictability is not random chaos, but different form of intelligence, one based on rapid adaptation rather than careful planning. Her patterns pulsed frustrated amber, which means my recommendations to the council may be based on incomplete understanding, which is professionally embarrassing. Despite the tension, Nathan smiled. Welcome to humanity. We confuse ourselves pretty regularly too. This does not comfort me. It should. If we confuse ourselves, how can we be a coordinated threat to anyone else? Nathan refilled both coffee cups. Look, here's what I'm thinking. You go back to your council with recommendations for containment or worse. You create a self-fulfilling prophecy. We become the threat you feared because you treated us as one. But if we work together, if you help your people understand us accurately instead of through worst-case scenario planning, maybe we avoid conflict neither of us needs. Kaiva's bioluminescence cycled through rapid calculations. You are suggesting I betray my mission parameters to pursue collaboration with the species I was sent to assess as potential threat. I'm suggesting your mission was based on incomplete data. Specifically, it didn't account for what happens when you're discovered and humans respond with curiosity instead of hostility. Update your data, adjust your conclusions, recommend alliance instead of containment. The Council will question my objectivity, suggest I have been compromised by prolonged contact with humans. Have you been? Kaiva considered the question honestly. 6 months of observation showed me your patterns. One conversation with you has shown me why those patterns defy my analytical models. So yes, perhaps I have been compromised by discovering my understanding was insufficient. Her patterns shifted to determine gold, but accurate intelligence is more valuable than comfortable conclusions. I will recommend truth, even if it contradicts my initial assessment. That's brave, also probably going to make your supervisors very unhappy. Sindari value accurate information above professional comfort. They will not be pleased, but they will listen. Kaiva stood, her decision made. I will arrange formal contact, present my findings to both our peoples, recommend alliance rather than containment. This will be unprecedented and uncomfortable for both sides. Most worthwhile things are. Nathan extended his hand, a human gesture Kaiva had observed but never participated in. Partners in making both our peoples uncomfortable. Kaiva studied the offered hand, then clasped it firmly. Partners in pursuing accurate understanding over comfortable assumptions. They shook, sealing an alliance born from exposure and honest conversation. Proof that sometimes being discovered is the best thing that can happen to a secret plan. The joint session between Sindari Council representatives and New Haven's colonial leadership was, in Nathan's professional opinion, going about as badly as expected. Colony Administrator Chen stood with arms crossed, her expression oscillating between fury and calculation. 6 months. You watched us for 6 months, cataloged our vulnerabilities, assessed our threat level, and we had no idea you were there. Accurate intelligence gathering requires time and thoroughness, Kaiva replied, her bioluminescent patterns displaying diplomatic neutrality. Premature contact based on incomplete data serves no one. Spying serves no one either. Chen's voice rose. You violated our sovereignty, our privacy, our. We observed, Kaiva corrected. From outside your territorial boundaries, using passive surveillance that caused no harm. This is standard Sindari protocol for assessing unknown species expansion into shared sectors. Nathan stepped between them, before the argument could escalate further. Administrator Chen, she could have sabotaged our infrastructure, compromised our systems, done real damage if hostile intent was the goal. Instead, she observed and tried to understand. That's something we can work with. She was preparing recommendations for our containment. She was preparing recommendations based on incomplete data. Then I found her, we talked, and those recommendations changed. Nathan gestured to Kaiva. She's risking her professional standing by advocating for alliance instead of the safer option of recommending we be contained or controlled. That took courage. On the Sindari side of the negotiation, Elder Vraxis regarded Kaiva with cold assessment. Observer Kaiva, you were compromised by contact with your surveillance target. Your objectivity is suspect. Your recommendations may reflect contamination rather than accurate analysis. Kaiva's bioluminescence flashed defensive crimson before she controlled it back to professional blue. I was discovered through human pattern recognition methods our equipment didn't detect. This discovery revealed gaps in our understanding of human capabilities. My recommendations reflect updated data, not compromise. You advocate for alliance with species you initially assessed as requiring containment. This represents fundamental reversal of professional judgment. It represents updated conclusions based on new information. The scientific method values adaptability over stubborn adherence to flawed initial hypotheses. Kaiva's patterns blazed with conviction. I observed humans for 6 months in controlled conditions. I learned their patterns, their behaviors, their predictable responses to various stimuli. Then one human, using methods I considered primitive, found me, approached with curiosity instead of hostility, and offered collaboration instead of confrontation. This single interaction revealed that my 6 months of careful observation had missed something crucial about human nature. What did it miss? Elder Vraxis asked. That human unpredictability is not weakness to be contained but strength to be partnered with. That their emotional decision-making produces creative solutions our careful planning would never generate. That their optimistically flexible approach to challenges makes them resilient in ways our models don't account for. Kaiva's voice strengthened. I assessed them as potential threat because I didn't understand them. Now I do. They are not threat requiring containment, they are allies worth cultivating. Administrator Chen's anger hadn't entirely dissipated, but curiosity was tempering it. You really think we can trust species that spent 6 months spying on us before making contact? You really think you can trust species whose first response to being discovered was offering coffee and conversation instead of military detention? Kaiva countered. We are both taking risks here. The question is whether those risks are worth the potential benefits of cooperation. Nathan pulled up holographic displays showing Kaiva's compiled data, infrastructure maps, behavioral analyses, resource assessments. She has 6 months of intelligence that could seriously compromise our security if used maliciously. Instead, she's offering to share it as foundation for mutual understanding. That's not nothing. It's also leverage, Chen pointed out. She knows everything about us. We know almost nothing about her people. Then let's change that, Kaiva said. I will provide equivalent intelligence on Sindari capabilities, infrastructure, and strategic interests. Mutual transparency as foundation for mutual trust. Elder Vraxis's bioluminescence flickered with alarm. You cannot seriously propose sharing classified Sindari intelligence with potential allies who have already demonstrated they respond to honesty with reciprocal honesty rather than exploitation. Kaiva interrupted. Yes, Elder, I seriously propose exactly that, because the alternative, maintaining information asymmetry while expecting them to trust us, is strategically nonsensical. The negotiations continued for hours. Both sides raised objections, questioned motives, tested boundaries. But slowly, grudgingly, a framework emerged. Kaiva would remain at New Haven as official Sindari liaison. Her surveillance data would be shared with human authorities as baseline for mutual understanding. Sindari would provide equivalent intelligence on their operations in the sector. Both sides would establish formal diplomatic channels and cooperative security protocols. It wasn't perfect. Trust would take time, but it was a foundation. As the session concluded, Nathan found Kaiva on the observation deck where she'd spent 6 months watching the colony from a distance. "Your council is furious with you," he observed. "Elder Vraxis believes I have been compromised by prolonged human contact, that my judgment is clouded by emotional contamination." Kaiva's patterns pulsed with wry amusement. He is partially correct. 6 months of observation did affect my judgment. It showed me that Sindari assumptions about human chaos were based on misunderstanding rather than accurate analysis. And now you're stuck here, dealing with our chaotic unpredictability every day. I volunteered for this assignment. Someone must bridge the gap between our peoples. It might as well be the observer who was discovered and learned that being found was more valuable than remaining hidden. She glanced at him. "Thank you, Nathan Cross, for finding me, for choosing curiosity over hostility, for proving that human unpredictability can produce cooperation instead of just chaos. Thank you for not shooting me when I showed up at your surveillance post. That would have made this whole thing significantly more complicated." Kaiva's bioluminescence pulsed with what Nathan had learned to recognize as amusement. "The thought occurred to me, briefly. Good to know I was almost murdered by interstellar spy. Really builds character." They stood together overlooking the colony, observer and discovered, building something neither had planned but both were committed to making work. 8 months after Nathan discovered Kaiva, their cooperation had become something neither expected, genuinely successful. Kaiva worked from New Haven's administrative complex instead of hidden observation posts, her bioluminescence displaying engaged colors rather than careful neutrality. "Elder Vraxis sent another inquiry," Kaiva mentioned. "Apparently, my communication style is concerningly informal. He cited my use of 'this sucks' in yesterday's budget meeting." "You have been compromised by human contact," Nathan teased. "I have been educated. There is difference." But her patterns showed amusement. A priority alert interrupted security breach at their joint research facility. Corporate operatives had stolen months of collaborative intelligence, threatening to prove cooperation created vulnerabilities. "This will fuel arguments that sharing intelligence was strategic error," Kaiva said, patterns flashing defensive calculations. "Or we demonstrate cooperation's strength by solving this together." Nathan pulled up data manifests. "Your analytical precision plus human adaptability might catch them in ways they won't anticipate." They worked in perfect synchronization. Kaiva's intelligence analysis identifying extraction routes, Nathan's team adapting predictions with human intuition. Combined capabilities recovered the stolen data before it left the system. During joint review, Elder Vraxis questioned the incident's implications. Kaiva stood before both leaders, patterns blazing confident gold. "This breach could have destroyed our alliance if we'd responded with suspicion. Instead, it proved combined capabilities exceed individual vulnerabilities. You worried I was compromised by human contact. You were correct. That contamination is exactly what solved this crisis." "You advocate that compromise is strength?" Vraxis asked. "I advocate that true cooperation means accepting influence from those we work with. Being compromised by human adaptability made me more effective, not less." After the conference, Nathan found Kaiva staring at the hills where she'd spent months observing from a distance. "You told your council that being compromised is good. That's brave or reckless. Sometimes truth is both." She turned to him, patterns warm. "You found me, responded with curiosity instead of hostility. Proved unpredictability could build rather than destroy. Everything that followed exists because you chose conversation over confrontation." And because you chose updated conclusions over defending initial assessments. We have both been compromised. You by Sindari planning, me by human chaos. Both worse at original jobs, better at current ones. They stood together overlooking the colony, no longer surveillance target but home she'd helped protect. Thank you for finding me, Kaiva said, for seeing opportunity in exposure, for proving that being discovered can be beginning rather than ending. Outside